Guys, Sarthak here from Code to Create, and this is the first video we're going to be doing in a series of videos where we're going to teach you how to code in the Java programming language. So today we'll be covering some introductory material. We're going to learn what computer science is, a little bit about what Java is and how it works, and we're going to be writing our first line of Java code. So let's get started. If you want to, you can open this presentation on your computer by following this public Google link. So we'll start off with what is computer science. The most rudimentary definition you'll find is that computer science is the study of computers. But it's so much more than that. What computer science really is the science of using computers to efficiently complete tasks that would be impossible or difficult otherwise. Code, which you've probably heard of, is the tool that computer science used to do this. They use code to manipulate computers and get the computer to do the tasks that they want to do. There are many types of coding languages, but we're going to start off with the Java programming language. So why Java? It's a fairly simple language and it's easy to learn. It's object-oriented, which is a type of programming language which we'll talk about later. And because it's object-oriented, it's closely related to some other common programming languages, such as C++, Objective-C, and JavaScript. It's also very useful. It can be used to program Android applications, websites, and desktop applications. And one of the big things about Java when it first came out is that it's portable, meaning that it can run on any operating system: Windows, Mac, Linux, all of them. So how it works. So how Java works and how what you type into the computer gets translated into what you might see in your screen is that the source code, which is what you type in the computer, you write it down, and then what happens is that the Java compiler takes this source code and turns it into Java bytecode, which the Java virtual machine can understand. So it goes from source code, compiler, bytecode. Then the Java machine takes this bytecode and essentially uses it as instructions to tell the computer what to do, and your program gets displayed onto the screen, or whatever you tell the computer to do will get executed. So like I said, Java is an object-oriented programming language. And now this means a wide array of things, but for right now, we're going to focus on the two biggest aspects of object-oriented programming, which go hand in hand with each other. This is classes and objects. So classes are the templates or blueprints for an object you create, and they describe and outline the behaviors and characteristics of the objects associated with that class. Now what the objects are they're physical instances of the class. They are basically an enactment of the class, and they have the behaviors and characteristics that the class is defined for it. So here's an example to help you think of it. A class could be an example of a class could be a car. A car could have the characteristics of a color and a model, and then have the behaviors such as starting, braking, and filling up gas. Now, when you create an object, say you create an object of the car class, you create a Mustang. So now the Mustang, it becomes the model of the car, and the color of the car, which is one of the other characteristics, you set it to red. You now have an object of type car called Mustang, which has the characteristics of a car, which you defined as red and Mustang, and can also enact the behaviors that a car can, such as it can fill up gas, it can start and it can stop, it can do all sorts of things. So essentially what you did is you created an overlying blueprint for your car, and then when you created an object, you created an instance of that car. So now we're actually going to start programming in the Java programming language. So what we're going to be programming in Eclipse. And Eclipse is a very commonly used IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. And it's the place where we're going to write code. And Eclipse is going to be able to do all the compiling and into bytecode, all that stuff for us, so we don't have to do that ourselves. So this is assuming you have Eclipse already installed. If not, there's plenty of tutorials online for you to install Eclipse. We might make a video later. So once you have Eclipse installed, we're going to open Eclipse. I'm opening right now. First thing that's going to happen, it's going to tell you to select your workspace. Now your workspace is basically where your coding takes place. So typically the default workspace works fine, so I'm going to press OK, and Eclipse proceeds to open. It's loading. And there we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project to do my coding in. So I'm going to File, New, Java Project, and we're going to name it whatever we want. So Typical naming condition, we're going to have start with a capital letter. Each new word is going to start with a capital letter. So let's call this project code to create. Finish. Wait for it to load. Now we go into our project, and we see this folder called SRC. SRC stands for source code. And remember, I said before, the code that we write is called source code. So we open it, we have a default package made, and I already have our Hello World Java class, which is what we're going to be making. So what we're going to do is I'll remake this so that you guys can see how to do it. Right-click on your source folder, go to New, Class, and what we're going to do is we have to name the class. So once again, the naming conditions for what we just named the package apply here. I'm going to call it Hello World 1 because I already have a Hello World. So now, here you can see, we have our public class Hello World 1. So now, I'm going to go into it just so we can type stuff. What this is basically telling us is that we have our class Hello World 1. Remember what we just talked about, classes are the blueprints for the objects. We have our class Hello World 1, and these two curly braces identify essentially where the class is. So the class Hello World 1 consists of everything between the opening curly brace and the closing curly brace. Everything in between there, the characteristics and behavior, belong to this class. And then all these, when you create an object of the class Hello World 1, the object will contain all the characteristics and behaviors that are identified between these two curly braces. So now let's actually put something in the class so that when we create an object or when we run this program or anything like that, something actually happens. So what we're going to put in the class is something called the main method. Now the main method is what is automatically executed when you run the program. And so this is going to seem a little obscure and weird at first, but just follow along and type this along with me, and then we're going to explain this, what all this means a little bit. So you're going to, the main method, this is the main method. You're going to type public static void main, open parenthesis, string with a capital S, square brackets, args, and then an opening curly brace, and when you hit enter, Eclipse should auto-generate the closing one. So now, this is our main method. You can tell because it's titled main right here. We have some keywords in front of it. We're going to talk about this in a little bit, and that's a parameter of args, which we're also going to talk about later. And so, when the Hello World 1 is executed when we run this program, it's this main method that automatically gets executed, and everything between these two curly braces that define where the main method is, that's what's going to get executed. So now let's actually put something into the main method. So once again, follow along. We're going to explain this in a little bit too. Type system with a capital S .out .println open parenthesis double quote hello world, and then at the end of the line put a semicolon. So now let's talk about what this means. So we just typed this line into our main method. So this is the command system.out.println is the command to print out a line to the console, and the console is basically this little area in the IDE which your programs are able to print stuff out into. And so this is the command for printing out a line, and this is the text to print out. You have to put the text in double quotes because that's the only way that Java recognizes what you typed in as a literal string, which is literally the characters that you typed in sequential order. Remember that in Java, capitalization is very vital. Everything that the compiler reads is case sensitive, meaning you have to capitalize this S, and also you have to put a semicolon at the end of the line. But the semicolon is there for just to tell the compiler that the line is ended. So after every statement you write in Java, such as this print statement right here, you're going to put a semicolon at the end of it, unless it's a statement that ends in a curly brace because you're opening a method or something of the sort. You end it with a semicolon to tell the compiler that this little command you're doing right here, it's over now. So after that, we're going to run our program. There's going to be a big green button right here, up towards the top center of the IDE, and you press that, and it's going to run the program. and wait for it to load. Here. So this is our console, what I just talked about earlier. And as you can see, it printed out hello world to the console like we told it to. So now let's actually kind of analyze and talk about what we just coded. So here we go. So the first thing that, the first thing that we did is we typed public class hello world. Well, actually we didn't type that, the computer auto-generated that for us. But anyway, that was the first thing that was there in our program. And so public class, that represents the object-oriented programming that we talked about towards the start of this video. And it's just basically telling us public, meaning that anything can access it. And also class, which represents that this is a class and an object can be instantiated off of it. Now let's talk about the main method. Like I said, the main method is what is automatically executed when you run the program. The main method also has some keywords such as public, static, void. Main is the name of it, and then has a parameter called args. All this stuff is very vital to the main method, but it's not something for an introductory video. So we're going to definitely talk about that, but we're going to talk about that later. Now let's talk about how we printed out this method. So Java has built-in libraries, which we're going to talk about in a second. So it called the system library that went to the out package and called the println method, which tells the computer to print out what's underlined right here and what is in these double quotes, print that out. So now we're going to talk about syntax and style when coding in Java. So syntax is the rules you have to follow while writing your program. And so it is what allows the compiler and computer to understand what you're coding. So examples of the syntax are the curly braces. The curly braces, for the class and the method, you have to have an opening curly brace and then a closing curly brace to match it. Then also the curly braces define the scope or where the actual content is. So the content of the class hello world is from this curly brace to this curly brace. The content of the main method is from here to here. Another aspect of syntax is case sensitivity, which I brushed on lightly earlier. So Java is case sensitive, meaning that when the compiler in Java Virtual Machine looks at your code, it identifies a lowercase s differently than a capital S. So if we call this method with a lowercase s, nothing will print out because there is no system library with a lowercase s, only a system library with a capital S. Now style is much different than syntax, and style is just basically the formatting of your program to make it easier to read to other programmers or to other people. An example of style is adding blank lines in between methods, and also at the end of the method to increase readability. So right here, here, here. Another big element of style is indentation. So indentation pretty much allows you to tell you what isn't what. So we indented the main method. We indented the main method so that we know when reading this that the main method is within hello world. Once again, we also indented the printing statement, so we know the printing statement is in the main method, which is in hello world. And so Eclipse actually does a nice thing of indenting for you. And so the big thing you should take away from this is that syntax are the mandatory rules of how you have to write a program. You need semicolons after every line. You need curly braces to define the scope of blocks of code and stuff like that. That is all mandatory. Style is not mandatory. It's optional, but it's highly recommended so that your code is easier to read. Little tip: if you want to format your code pretty much the essentially perfect way, you can go into Eclipse and you can close the console. Go Eclipse, do Control-Shift-F, and it'll format your code for you. As you can see, my code's already formatted, and your code usually is too if you let Eclipse do all the formatting for you. So Control-Shift-F formats it for you. Now the last thing we're going to talk about is keywords and libraries. Keywords are words reserved by Java, which have a special meaning to the compiler. And these are words such as public and class and stuff like that. And so these words cannot be used as identifiers. And we're going to talk about that in the next video. Identifiers are essentially some things that you name variables and such. So you might have noticed that while you're coding, a lot of words were highlighted or bolded by eclipse, and all the words highlighted and bolded in purple are keywords, meaning these words have special meanings to the compiler, and you can't name variables and other things these words. These words include public, class, static, void, and there are a bunch of others. Now, libraries, which we touched on earlier, are packages of code that can be used and referenced by a program. Obviously, the system library exists, otherwise we wouldn't be able to call this method. You can import libraries, which we're going to talk about in a later video, but the Java also has some built-in libraries such as system, because we didn't have to import this, and we're able to call the print method from it to print out hello world. Alright, so that's it for today. We covered what computer science is, why we're using Java, how it works, and we coded our first line of Java and analyzed how it works, what it all means, and stuff like that. So next time we're going to cover variables and operators, and as always, you can practice your coding skills with the exercises on our website at codetocreate.org. Alright, thanks for watching. We love constructive feedback, so please comment, and we'd love it if you subscribe too. Thank you, and see you in the next video.